Welcome to Sex at 10. I'm Rebecca Rosenblat, certified relationship and sexuality therapist and your host, here to answer your questions on all things intimate. Whether you're stuck in a relationship dilemma, have issues with your body, trust, trauma, addiction, or orientation, or just need a little help with turning up the heat in your bedroom, give us a shout at 1-800-968-7836 and let's chat. Everything's fair game. If you thought about it, we can talk about it. Let's begin with a discussion on women's sexual health after 40. And to help me with that, we're being joined by an expert in the area, Chia Chin Sun. Chia is a pharmaceutical executive turned women's health entrepreneur whose passions include breaking taboos and creating products for women over 40. Currently, she's the founder and CEO of Demiva Inc. that's introducing one of those very exciting products. Welcome and good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So excited about doing this interview with you tonight. Chacha, I recently saw a really fun musical, Menopause Out Loud, which covered everything from hot flashes to mood swings, expanding midriffs to the need for buzzy things for that little extra stimulation, one of which we hope to show later in the show. But in as much as I enjoyed how all that was handled, I was painfully aware of how little most people know about the more subtle symptoms which go along with menopause and perimenopause, sexual health, for instance. So perhaps you could begin our discussion by commenting on some of those changes and the mental state which ties into those.
Thank you so much again, Rebecca, for having me. And so really this is a bit of my own journey as a pharmaceutical executive. I started learning about women's health when I was researching vaginal dryness associated with breast cancer, and that's what led to the creation of our all-natural vaginal lubricant. And something that I learned, and I was 43 when I learned this, and I'm 46 now, and I learned at 43 that I had been perimenopausal for 3 years, essentially, because perimenopause typically starts at age 40. Another aspect of my journey in terms of women's health has been learning that perimenopause is a real time of transition, and it lasts about 10 years.
Absolutely.
And it ends eventually at around age 50 or 51, at which time a woman goes into menopause fully. And one of the aspects that I learned was that women in perimenopause are at the highest risk of clinical depression. In fact, 16% of women between the ages of 40 and 50 who've never experienced clinical depression will experience it for the first time. Another 16% will experience mild depression.
That's pretty high.
It's pretty high. That's about 1 in 3.
Yeah, most people don't realize it. And there's all these jokes about irritability and changes in mood, but nobody appreciates how real and how painful and difficult clinical depression is. I see lots of women in my private practice, and what is this? We don't want to be here. But somehow all those tongue-in-cheek jokes minimize the pain that they go through.
That's right, and as well as the pain, there are intimacy issues due to vaginal dryness, and we're also seeing women who are not understanding what the changes that their bodies are going into, like you mentioned, in terms of this menopause out loud.
And I think so. I'm really excited about the interview tonight because a lot of times, even though it's such intimacy, obviously these two people should be very close and be able to talk about everything. Women are not talking about their changes. Men are not talking about their changes. So often when men, they have erectile dysfunction, they stop approaching their partner for sex, and the partner thinks, oh my gosh, I have changes, my partner no longer is interested in me, and they pull further away, and the discomfort isn't really making them want to jump all over it in the first place. So I'm really glad that you're going to be covering all of that. Viewers, if you or your partner is experiencing that change of life and you're perplexed about how long the symptoms are likely to last and how you can manage them in the interim, tonight's a great night to call us. Now, speaking of calling in, a common question we get has to do with vaginal discomfort, which you just started talking about during intercourse, tying into the vaginal atrophy and dryness. So can you please talk about that a little bit more next?
Sure. About 85% of women after menopause experience vaginal dryness, and about 40% experience pain with intercourse. So those are pretty high numbers, and that was in a survey of over 1,000 women over the ages of 55, between 55 and 65.
85%, that's a really high figure.
And it likely will increase over time and as we age. And so the way I like to think about it is like wrinkles. It's inevitable that we'll get them, but there are ways of slowing them down.
Slowing them down, absolutely. And you know, the area is going to get fragile, but there is a way of making sure that it's not so fragile that there's actually discomfort and bleeding and soreness after the fact. And lots of women, they'll say, you know, for the first time in my life, I was looking forward to having sex. There's no kids that are going to run into the room, and I don't have to work late hours. I'm just starting to kind of wind down. I have my second wind, what Gail Sheehy would call the sexually seasoned woman, that stage. But just as I'm looking forward to it, the discomfort comes, and sadly, I end up kind of shutting down, and I'm not willing to go there. Viewers, if you're struggling with sexual issues which tie into this topic or beyond, please don't hesitate to call in to chat with the experts. Chacha, let's discuss hormones next, since those changes can have a serious impact on relationships both in and out of the bedroom.
Well, what happens as we enter perimenopause is that our estrogen and progesterone levels fluctuate quite a bit. And so, in fact, our estrogen levels can go up and down, and that leads to estrogen dominance. But another aspect of estrogen dominance is pairing with low progesterone. And low progesterone is very common in perimenopausal women, especially at the end of a menstrual cycle. And I think what I certainly didn't know this before my journey in terms of women's health, is that not just progesterone levels dropping, but after menopause, when our ovaries essentially shut down, our ovaries still make testosterone and estrogen, but they don't make progesterone anymore. And that's the loving, nesting, nurturing hormone. So not only is our progesterone going steadily lower, essentially after menopause, it shuts down.
Shuts right down. Huh?
And so after the age of 50, you can imagine that can have an impact, big impact.
Enormous impact,
in terms of relationships with your children or partner. And so it's very important that we're aware in perimenopause of what's happening to our progesterone levels at the end of our cycles and then afterwards and after menopause.
That's such an important point, because lots of times people don't think what could be going on. Again, you know, they sort of think the person's becoming irritable, but you said that nurturing sense, that wanting to just kind of, that warm and fuzzy thing, it in fact starts to drop down.
Essentially, especially 3 days before your menstrual cycle begins, that's when your progesterone's at its lowest. And this happens to all of us, you know, essentially, but it becomes more attenuated during perimenopause. And, you know, I myself had a hormonal moment when my partner put some beautiful flowers in a shopping cart for me, and I just picked them up and I just put them back. And he said, "What's wrong? Was there something wrong with the flowers?
What did I do?"
What did I do? And I just said, "I don't like them." And he said, he's my business partner as well as my personal partner, and he said, "I think your progesterone's low."
Well, what an amazing man to recognize that your progesterone is low. Somebody else would have gotten upset and said, "You are never getting flowers again,
Exactly.
ever." Even if you decide you want them, all of a sudden
That's
you are
right.
not going to be getting
You're cut off.
You're cut off, that's it. But how fortunate that he was able to say that. Viewers, if you're struggling with sexy time or that loving feeling, grab that phone right now and call us to enrich our discussion. Chacha, you and I are all about sexual empowerment for women at any age, which is why I've written a book on the subject matter, and you've developed a great product to help with the same by facilitating sexual health in women over 40. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about that. What exactly is it? What does it do? Who is the ideal candidate? How can our audience find it? And all that good stuff about this new product that you're launching.
So May is by Demiva is what it's called, and it's named after Mae West because she is absolutely
so feminine
and an icon and a heroine for writing the Broadway play Sex and then being jailed for it. And so May is an all-natural vaginal lubricant. It has 0 chemical preservatives. It has plant butters, and it has hyaluronic acid, which helps to retain moisture.
And so people use that on their face, all the products with hyaluronic acid.
Exactly. And So everything in it is 100% natural, and really you can find it anywhere. You can find it at Shoppers Drug Mart, London Drugs, Rexall, IDA, Guardian, and Loblaws. So it's
all the drugstores and supermarkets stock it.
Exactly,
That's awesome.
across Canada. And really the way we like to think about it is that it's more of a moisturizer that you can use every 2 to 3 days to help lubricate. It can be used in advance of intercourse, about 10 minutes to, some women use it up to 24 hours in advance. So it helps with spontaneity as well. But it's essentially a plant butter suppository that melts within the vaginal tract within about 10 minutes.
Awesome. But the way you're describing, it's not necessarily something that you use just for sex like you would lubrication. This is actually changing your vaginal health with it. So you can be using it on an ongoing basis, not just save it for that.
Exactly. And really the way I think about it is just like we moisturize our face, we need to moisturize our vaginas as well.
Exactly.
And what would you put on your face, for 30 years, 50 years, 60 years? It's the same with the vaginal tract. We want something both efficacious as well as healthy.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really great comparison, because people spend all kinds of money on their face and yet they don't take care of something so intimate and so important. And people going to the gym, they're building their bodies, but they're not doing the Kegels to make sure that the musculature there stays healthy and it doesn't atrophy. So I like the comparison you've made. Hopefully that speaks to people to just be healthy both inside and out. Viewers, call us if you'd like to chat with either Chacha or myself. It's a great way to get your questions answered. Now, Chacha, one of the reasons that I've written my book and that you've developed your product is because we both recognize how important sexual empowerment is, particularly for women over 40, who are often less likely to speak up about their sexuality, especially when it comes to their vaginal health. So perhaps you could make some final comments around that next.
Sure. Well, I think really at the core is what you do in terms of empowerment. It's really important. Like you said, women get to a certain age and we're like, we know what we want now and what we need, but in some ways it might be out of our grasp because of physical changes that are beyond our control. And I've talked to many women who say, I'm on my, second life, second career, second relationship, major relationship.
We get that second win once we put the landmarks to rest.
Exactly.
That were expected of us the first time around.
That's right. And then, but they can't really get started again because of issues like vaginal dryness. And many women aren't even aware that vaginal dryness is an issue and it's turning them off sex. And so, first of all, there's lack of awareness, and then there's the lack of empowerment. And then really what we're focused on is the lack of information and products, because what you do in terms of educating and empowering, it's really core. And what we believe is that there just need to be a lot more products for women.
Absolutely.
To have solutions and to take advantage of, as we age and as we get to better understand what we need and want.
And we're so fortunate that in this day and age, we're finally, putting the spotlight on female sexuality, because even though it's every bit as important as male sexuality, it's always been, it goes hand in hand with women being expected to be coy instead of celebrating the sexuality. So to be able to talk about it, but also to have products that help, because many times, because of what I do, people will send me all kinds of samples, and rarely am I impressed. I absolutely loved your product. It was really great because it's natural, and some of the products, they tend to, they sting, or the next day you can feel a little sore, but this was just so natural. It felt beautiful, and it felt like butter. So a lovely product indeed. I'm so excited that you shared some very important points with us tonight, and also for women to know that the arousal cycle can flip-flop too. So instead of desire, arousal, stimulation, orgasm, sometimes arousal needs to come first. So while we're working on the arousal, certainly they can use this product and make it part of the foreplay, and just, around the lips and internally and whatever they want to do. It can be quite a sexy part of it. So I really, really thank you for having this very important discussion with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back. Keep your calls coming and let's discuss sex, relationships, romance, or whatever else rocks your boat. And keep it locked on Rogers TV because we have lots more great stuff still ahead, including your calls. So pick up that phone and call so we can connect.